The forgotten species. The reports of humanity's extinction had been greatly exaggerated. For 3 centuries, the species known as humans had been relegated to historical archives, a cautionary tale taught in the academic institutions of the Coalition of Advanced Species. Earth, once the cradle of a promising civilization, was now little more than a radioactive memorial, a testament to the folly of unchecked aggression and technological recklessness, or so the galaxy believed. Tazari Voss, senior xenorchaeologist for the Coalition Science Directory, hovered above the derelict station, her scaled skin reflecting the dim emergency lights that still functioned after all these decades. Her species, the luminary, were among the first to document humanity's apparent demise, their photographic memory and longevity making them ideal historical record keepers. Scan complete, Director Voss, her assistant Mektar announced, his voice crackling through the comm system. The station appears to have been abandoned approximately 47 standard cycles ago, far more recent than expected. Tazari's inner eyelids flickered with surprise. That's impossible. Humanity's extinction event was nearly 3 centuries ago. This station should have been dead for at least 250 cycles. She maneuvered her environmental suit through the zero-gravity corridor, her 6-fingered hand brushing against the station's walls. The Coalition had tasked her with cataloging remnants of extinct civilizations, standard procedure before resource extraction began in previously inhabited systems. This station orbiting Proxima Centauri should have been empty, decayed, and ready for salvage. Instead, Tazari found herself floating through corridors that showed signs of recent habitation. "Director, you need to see this." Mektar's voice had an unusual edge. Central Command Room. When Tazari arrived, the holographic display in the center of the room flickered to life, responding to her presence. Text scrolled across the screen in an archaic human language she recognized as English. Aurora Station Log. Emergency Protocol Engaged. Evacuation complete. 47 personnel relocated. DSTIN EPSI on directive. MDSSAGE for Coalition Forces. We remember. By the ancestral light, Tazari whispered, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with alarm. They survived. Humans survived. For 3 centuries, the Coalition had built its expansion on the ashes of humanity's former territories. 17 Coalition species now inhabited what had once been human space, mining their abandoned worlds, colonizing their terraformed planets, and dismantling their technologies for study. The Galactic Council had authorized it, all based on one fundamental assumption: humans were extinct. An assumption that now appeared catastrophically wrong. The Coalition headquarters on Neos Prime buzzed with activity as representatives from the 17-member species gathered in the emergency session. Tazari's findings had sent shockwaves throughout Coalition leadership. High Chancellor Drav, a massive Xorilian whose silicon-based body seemed to absorb all light in the chamber, slammed his crystalline appendage against the table. "How is this possible?" His voice reverberated through the translator nodes. "Our historical records clearly document the human extinction event, their planetary civil war, the nuclear devastation, the collapse of their atmospheric systems. Nothing could have survived." Tazari stood before the council, her findings displayed on the massive screen behind her. "The evidence suggests a coordinated evacuation, Chancellor. Not just from Earth, but from multiple human settlements. The Aurora Station records indicate this was part of something called the Epsilon Directive, apparently a contingency plan." "For what purpose?" asked Zelna, the spindly representative of the Arachnary Collective. "Revenge. Retaliation." The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. The Coalition's expansion had been built upon humanity's former territories. If humans still existed, they might view the Coalition as usurpers, thieves who had claimed their birthright while they struggled to survive. "Unknown," Tazari admitted, "but there's more." The station's data cores contained fragments of information, transmission logs, navigational data, They suggest human activity across multiple sectors, dating back at least a century. A century. Chancellor Drav's crystalline structure darkened with emotion. They've been watching us. Hiding. Planning. Perhaps, Tazari conceded, or simply surviving. Either way, this raises questions about our historical understanding. If humans survived their extinction event, what else might our historical records have wrong? The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices as representatives debated the implications. Some called for immediate military mobilization, others for diplomatic outreach. A few even suggested a cover-up, destroying the evidence and maintaining the narrative of human extinction. Silence. Chancellor Drav's voice cut through the chaos. This information cannot leave this chamber. The coalition's stability depends on unity, on shared prosperity. If word spreads that we've built our expansion on territories belonging to a species that still exists, it could fracture everything we've built. With respect, Chancellor, Tazari's voice was steady despite her racing thoughts. We need to know more. If humans have survived all this time without detection, they've clearly developed capabilities beyond our understanding. Ignoring this discovery won't make it go away. Before the Chancellor could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. Every screen in the room switched to a security feed from the Coalition's outer defense perimeter. Multiple unidentified vessels had just appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. Fleet Commander Ilara Chen watched the Coalition's defense platforms through the quantum viewport of her flagship, Nightshade. After decades of preparation, after generations of patience and sacrifice, humanity was finally ready to announce its survival to the galaxy. All stealth systems functioning at optimal capacity, Commander, her XO reported. Coalition sensors are attempting to lock onto our position, but the phase shift technology is confusing their targeting systems. Ilara nodded, her expression unreadable. Born in deep space aboard one of humanity's hidden habitats, she had never set foot on Earth. She had only seen humanity's homeworld through historical records, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, before the Coalition's predecessors had orchestrated its downfall. Coalition communication channels are erupting with chatter, Communications Officer Torres announced. They're panicking, trying to figure out where we came from and how we bypassed their sensor networks. Good, Ilara replied, her voice steady. Begin the transmission. The message humanity had prepared for this moment was simple but unmistakable. It would broadcast across every communication frequency used by Coalition forces in all 17 of their languages. To the Coalition of Advanced Species, for 3 centuries, you have built your civilization upon the ruins of our own. You have claimed our worlds, harvested our resources, and taught your children that we were extinct, a failed species that destroyed itself through war and folly. This narrative served your expansion, justified your colonization, and absolved you of responsibility. Today that narrative ends. Humanity did not perish. We endured. We evolved. We remember. As the message transmitted, Ilara felt a strange calm. This moment had been generations in the making. While the Coalition believed they were expanding into abandoned territory, humanity had been rebuilding in the shadows, developing technologies the Coalition couldn't imagine, establishing hidden bases in systems the Coalition deemed uninhabitable, and watching as their former home was carved up among alien powers. Message delivered, Commander, Torres confirmed. No response yet. They're still processing, Ilara replied. Prepare for Phase 2. Phase 2 was the demonstration, not an attack. Humanity wasn't ready for open warfare against the combined might of 17 advanced species, but a show of capabilities that would ensure the Coalition took them seriously in the negotiations to come. Target locked on Coalition defense platform Gamma 6, Weapons Officer Rise announced. Quantum displacement device ready. Execute, Ilara ordered. The weapon fired, not a destructive beam or explosive projectile, but something far more advanced. The defense platform, A massive structure housing thousands of coalition personnel and weapon systems simply vanished from its position. 2 seconds later, it reappeared 10,000 kilometers away, intact but completely disabled. Quantum displacement technology, humanity's breakthrough achievement during their exile. The ability to instantly transport matter across vast distances by temporarily shifting it out of normal spacetime. A technology the Coalition had never even theorized was possible. Defense platform successfully relocated. Rise confirmed. All systems aboard the platform are offline. Ilara nodded. Send the second message. This message was shorter. We come not for war, but for justice. The Coalition Council will meet with humanity's representatives in 72 hours. Location: Earth orbit. Come alone, Chancellor Drav. History will be corrected. As the Nightshade and its companion vessels engaged their phase shift drives and disappeared from Coalition sensors, Ilara allowed herself a small, grim smile. 3 centuries of hiding, of building, of planning, all leading to this moment. Humanity was ready to reclaim its place among the stars, not through the brute force the Coalition expected, but through the ingenuity, adaptability, and determination that had allowed them to survive extinction itself. The game had finally begun. Tazari found herself summoned to the Chancellor's private chambers, a rare honor that filled her with unease rather than pride. The discovery of humanity's survival had transformed Coalition politics overnight, with factions already forming between those who favored aggressive response and those who urged caution. You found them, Chancellor Drav stated as she entered. It wasn't an accusation, merely a fact. I found evidence of their survival, Tazari corrected. Their actual reappearance was unexpected. The Chancellor's crystalline form pulsed with dark energy. The Council is divided. Some believe we should marshal our full military might and crush this human resurgence before it can threaten our civilization. Others suggest appeasement, returning certain territories, offering reparations. And what do you believe, Chancellor? Tazari asked. I believe in survival. The Chancellor turned to face her directly. The humans have demanded my presence at Earth in 72 hours. I will go. Is that wise? They clearly harbor resentment toward the Coalition. Perhaps, the Chancellor conceded, but they could have attacked directly. Instead, they demonstrated power, then called for talks. That suggests rationality, not blind vengeance. He paused. I want you to accompany me. Tazari's inner eyelids flickered with surprise. Me? I'm an archaeologist, not a diplomat. You understand humanity better than anyone in the Coalition. You've studied their history, their psychology, their culture. And critically, you found them when everyone else assumed they were gone. That gives you perspective the Council lacks. As Tazari considered the Chancellor's words, she couldn't help but wonder what humanity had become during their centuries in exile. The species the Coalition had dismissed as extinct had developed technology beyond their comprehension. They had survived, hidden, and now returned with capabilities that made even the mighty Coalition tremble. The humans were coming home, and the galaxy would never be the same. The reckoning. Earth looked nothing like the historical records. Chancellor Drav's diplomatic vessel entered orbit around humanity's ancestral home, and even the stoic Cerulean felt something akin to shame at the sight. Where blue oceans and white clouds should have dominated, there were now vast swaths of gray. Dead zones where nothing grew, nothing lived. The atmospheric distortion was visible even from space, a sickly haze that enveloped much of the northern hemisphere. This is what extinction looks like, Tazari murmured beside him, her bioluminescence dimmed in reverence. Not the clean historical accounts we teach, but this devastation. The Chancellor didn't respond. As the architect of much of the Coalition's expansion policy, he had approved numerous operations to harvest resources from former human territories. It had always been justified by humanity's apparent self-destruction. They were claiming abandoned resources, not stealing from a living species. That justification now felt hollow as they approached the designated meeting coordinates. "Chancellor, we're detecting something unusual," the pilot announced. The orbital zone ahead appears, distorted. As if in response to the observation, the distortion rippled and parted like a curtain, revealing what had been hidden behind it. Not a ship, not a station, but an entire fleet. Dozens of vessels of varying sizes, all bearing designs unlike anything in Coalition records. And at the center, a massive structure that took the Chancellor's breath away. "Is that?" Tazari couldn't finish the question. "Yes," confirmed the Coalition science officer. "According to historical records, that's the International Space Station, humanity's first major orbital habitat. But it's transformed." The historical ISS had been a modest structure, a testament to humanity's early steps into space. This, however, was something else entirely. The original framework remained visible at its core, but around it had grown an enormous complex of interconnected modules, habitats, and defense systems. What had once been a scientific outpost was now a fortified command center. "They preserved it," Tazari whispered. "Through everything, they held on to this piece of their history." A communication request pinged on their system, and after a nod from the Chancellor, the view screen activated. The face that appeared belonged to a human female, olive-skinned with dark hair pulled back severely from her face, eyes that seemed to contain both weariness and unyielding determination. "Chancellor Drav," she stated without preamble. "I am Commander Ilara Chen, representing the United Systems of Humanity. Welcome to Earth, or what remains of it." The meeting chamber within the transformed ISS bore little resemblance to the sterile diplomatic halls of the Coalition. Here, history was physically present. Preserved sections of the original station maintained behind transparent barriers, artifacts of early space exploration mounted in display cases, and most strikingly, a large window offering an unobstructed view of the scarred Earth below. Commander Chen sat across from Chancellor Drav and Tazari, her posture military perfect, but her expression unreadable. Flanking her were other humans with diverse appearances, a reminder of the species' genetic variability that had once been one of their evolutionary advantages. 312 years. Chen began without preamble. "That's how long humanity has lived in exile from our homeworld. 3 centuries of hiding, surviving, and rebuilding while the Coalition carved up our territories, like conquering warlords dividing spoils." Chancellor Drav shifted his crystalline form, a gesture his species used to indicate acknowledgement. The Coalition believed humanity extinct. All evidence pointed to a catastrophic self-destruction event. "Evidence fabricated by the Precursor Council," Chen replied sharply. "The very powers that later formed your Coalition." Tazari felt a chill run through her bioluminescent circulatory system. "Fabricated. Our historical records clearly document the human civil war that led to nuclear exchange and..." "Lies," interrupted an older human male seated beside Chen. "Admiral Zhou, according to the introductions, Earth was attacked. The atmospheric collapse was engineered. What your Coalition teaches as humanity's self-destruction was actually the first interstellar genocide, carefully orchestrated, then disguised as a tragedy of our own making." The accusation hung in the air, enormous and terrible. If true, it would mean the Coalition's founding narrative, that they had risen from the ashes of humanity's self-destruction to build a more stable galactic community, was built on a foundation of blood and deception. "That's an extraordinary claim," Chancellor Drav finally managed, "one that contradicts centuries of established history. History written by the victors," Chen said coldly. "While your ancestors were rewriting our story, the survivors of humanity were gathering in the shadows. We've spent 3 centuries preparing for this day, the day we reveal the truth and reclaim what's ours." With a gesture from Chen, the room's holographic system activated, displaying a 3-dimensional timeline of events. Not the sanitized version taught in Coalition institutions, but a brutal chronicle of conspiracy and betrayal. It showed how the early interstellar powers, fearful of humanity's rapid technological advancement and territorial expansion, had collaborated to engineer Earth's downfall, how they had infiltrated human governments, escalated existing tensions, and finally deployed bioweapons and atmospheric destabilizers disguised as human weapons. "We have the evidence," Admiral Zhao stated. "Recovered communications, precursor council meeting records, technical specifications of the weapons used against Earth. While the Coalition taught its children that humanity destroyed itself, we taught ours the truth and prepared them for this reckoning." Chancellor Drav's crystalline form had darkened almost to black, a sign of extreme distress in his species. "If what you say is true, and I am not conceding that it is, those responsible were the Precursor Council, not the modern Coalition. Many of our member species weren't even spacefaring when these events occurred. Yet you built your prosperity on the foundation of that crime," Chen countered. "Colonized our worlds, harvested our resources, erased our existence from the living narrative of the galaxy." Tazari, whose species prided itself on objective record-keeping, felt foundations crumbling beneath her. "What do you want from us? Vengeance? War?" For the first time, Commander Chen's expression softened slightly. "If vengeance were our goal, this conversation wouldn't be happening. We've had the capability to strike at the Coalition for decades. We chose another path." While the diplomatic meeting continued aboard the transformed ISS across the galaxy, humanity revealed just how thoroughly they had infiltrated Coalition space during their supposed extinction. On the Coalition capital of Neos Prime, communication systems suddenly broadcast historical records contradicting the official narrative of human extinction. On 17 major Coalition worlds, holographic projections appeared in public spaces showing evidence of the Precursor Council's conspiracy against Earth. And in the highly secure Coalition historical archives, curators discovered that thousands of classified files related to humanity had been accessed, copied, and marked with a simple message: "Truth demands witness." None of this was random. For generations, humans had been placing agents, technology, and contingencies throughout Coalition space, preparing for this moment when the truth would be impossible to contain. "We don't want war," Commander Chen explained as reports of the information release flooded into the meeting chamber. "War would devastate both our peoples, and humanity has seen enough devastation." "Then what do you want?" Chancellor Drav demanded, shaken by the coordinated information campaign unfolding across Coalition space. "Recognition, restoration, coexistence on our terms." Chen activated another holographic display, this one showing a map of former human territories. These systems, Earth, Alpha Centauri, Ta Ceti, Epsilon Eridani, and Procyon, were the heart of human space before the attack. "We want them returned, recognized as sovereign human territory." The Chancellor studied the map. The requested systems represented only a fraction of what had once been human-controlled space, but they included some of the Coalition's most productive colonies. "Millions of Coalition citizens live in those systems now," he pointed out. "Multiple member species have established colonies, industries, governments." "They can stay," Admiral Zhao responded, surprising both Coalition representatives. "Under human governance, with guaranteed rights and protections. The same civility the Coalition never showed us. We're not seeking to replicate the crime committed against us." Tazari found herself marveling at humanity's approach. After centuries of exile, after losing their homeworld, and being written out of galactic history, they weren't demanding total restoration or pursuing genocidal vengeance. They were proposing a path forward that acknowledged reality while securing their future. "And if the Coalition refuses?" the Chancellor asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Commander Chen's expression hardened again. "Then we demonstrate why that would be unwise. Our quantum displacement technology, which you witnessed in our first contact, is just one of many advances we've made during our exile. We could have used it to relocate your entire Coalition Council into deep space. Instead, we moved one defense platform as a demonstration, a show of force while still extending a diplomatic hand," Tazari observed. calculated to maximize leverage while minimizing casualties. Precisely, Chen nodded. We've had 3 centuries to study the coalition, to understand its strengths and vulnerabilities. We know exactly how to apply pressure where it will be most effective and least destructive. The message was clear. Humanity could inflict devastating damage if provoked, but was choosing restraint, for now. The negotiations lasted 3 days, and when they concluded, the galaxy had been transformed. The Coalition Council, facing both humanity's technological leverage and the internal pressure created by the release of historical truths, ultimately accepted a modified version of humanity's terms. The 5 core systems would be recognized as the sovereign territory of the United Systems of Humanity. Coalition citizens living in those systems could choose to remain under human governance or relocate with compensation. A joint historical commission would be established to document the true events surrounding Earth's devastation and humanity's survival. And perhaps most significantly, humanity would join the galactic community not as a subjugated species seeking redmission, but as a power that had earned its place through unimaginable perseverance. 1 month after the Earth Accords were signed, Tazari Voss found herself invited back to the transformed International Space Station. Commander Chen greeted her personally, leading her through sections of the station she hadn't seen during the negotiations. "You've been appointed as the Coalition's representative to the Historical Commission," Chen noted as they walked. "An interesting choice. I find the truth more valuable than comfortable narratives," Tazari replied. "That's why I was able to recognize the evidence of your survival when others dismissed it." They entered a vast chamber that Tazari hadn't seen during her previous visit, a memorial space. Projected on the walls were countless faces, names, and stories of humans who had perished during what was now officially acknowledged as the Earth attack, not the Earth Civil War.